was one of the first rock concerts held in a major outdoor stadium, and the fact that a zombie band was performing had the city government on edge. As there was no precedent, putting together a security plan for Shea Stadium, not to mention New York City as a whole, was complete guesswork. Neither New York City Mayor Robert F. Wagner Jr. nor his staff had a clue how to deal with what. The fact of the matter is they didn't know what they'd have to deal with. It could have turned out to be a completely peaceful crowd. It could have turned out to be hundreds of thousands of screaming Beatlemaniacs and disturbed zombie fanatics ready and eager to trash Queens. It could have turned out to be something in between those two extremes. I had no clue. My editor didn't assign me to cover the concert. The only reason I was there is because my girlfriend Donna Errol was the Times rock writer, and I was her +1. I certainly would have attended in my own accord. I like the Beatles as much as the next guy. There's no way I would have gone to Shea, only to be surrounded by a bunch of screaming teenage girls. Now, the only time I'd seen the Beatles perform previously was their second appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show, the one where they blew up those poor cameramen. They looked perfectly poised on the television screen, right up to the moment when the screen went black. But that night at Shea, as they walked to the stage from the third base dugout, I thought they looked twitchy. They stuck me and Donna in the first base dugout, which was about 10 feet away from stage left. The stage was raised and the dugout was below ground level, so the only Beatle we were able to see clearly was the Beatle who always stood stage left, John Lennon. I recently read an interview where Paul said that John went crazy during the concert, but it seemed to me he was acting a little crazy even before they played a note. Donna said the band was too energetic and pointed out that Paul was counting off the songs too quickly, and they were racing through their 2.5-minute tunes in about 1:45. She also noted that it was weird they had an electric keyboard on stage for John because, as far as she knew, Lennon was at best an amateur pianist. They had their amplifiers turned all the way up, and since we were so close to the stage, by the third number our ears were ringing. So I took a tissue from my pocket, ripped off 2 little pieces, wadded them up, and voila, makeshift earplugs. I did the same for Donna, and it's a damn good thing to do. Seemingly, only a few minutes later, the band went into the last song of their set, I'm Down. Lennon started playing the keyboard with his elbow. Actually, he wasn't playing it, but rather hitting it back and forth, creating a weird dissonant messing noise. When the song ended, Lennon smacked the keyboard with his forehead and the stadium went silent. The screaming stopped. 55,000 plus people shut down just like that. And then Lennon grabbed the microphone, jumped on top of the keyboard and whispered one word, Papa Rose. And the place went up for grabs. In virtual unison, everybody in the crowd ripped their seats from the concrete and threw them onto the field. A good number of the hard green wooden chairs hit the Beatles, but they seemed unaffected. For that matter, Harrison even threw a bunch of them back. And then the adults in the crowd froze in place, and the teenagers stormed the field. Watching the police detail try to stem the tide of boys and girls was laughable. The cops were standing a good 10 feet apart, and the teens, who were all literally foaming at the mouth, plowed over, around, and through New York's finest. To their credit, the police did their best, but they had no chance. After the teens tore up and ate every blade of grass in Shea Stadium, the entire crowd, they were a mob at this point really, stampeded to the exits. They moved quickly and violently, but almost politely, as if to make certain that none of their allies were injured. Aside from all the teens vomiting up the half-digested grass, it looked to me like they were heading off to the train station for work. At that point, the Shea Stadium concert went from being a music story to a crime story. So I told Donna to haul ass back to her apartment because I had to follow this through to the end, and I couldn't have her tagging along. She berated me for risking my life for a newspaper that paid me $15,000 a year, and I told her to fuck off. This was a big deal, and money was not the issue. Then she asked me how the hell I expected to get us out of Manhattan, into Manhattan, when the subways were going to be filled with hypnotized Beatlemaniacs who might be out for blood. I told her she had a point, but I had to follow the story through. If she thought she could keep up with me, great. If not, I was going to have to go without her. Now, I'd been a sprinter at Columbia and was considerably faster than she was, so I gave her a kiss and then zipped out of the stadium to the subway station. The next time I saw her, I was in the post-surgical recovery room at the Queens Medical Center. She was back to work 8 weeks later with a 16-inch zigzag star running from her chest to her pelvis. The The mob took over the subway. That weird aura of politeness went out the window. From across the street, I could see they weren't jumping the turnstiles. They were ripping them clean off and climbing over one another as if they were tigers on a hunt, grabbing, clawing, biting, spitting, roaring, not caring what or who they were hurting. There's no way I was getting on that train, so I hopped a cab. My gut told me they'd ride from Shea to Grand Central Station, and I was right. According to the reports, 1/3 of the crowd exited at Grand Central, while the other 2/3 transferred to other lines. Within an hour, the 55,000 people who John Lennon had hypnotized were strategically dispersed throughout the city. I don't know if Lennon planned it that way or if these poor people were acting on instinct. If your readers want specific on the riots, for instance, the Times Square bonfire, the complete destruction of the Bronx sewer system, or those brutal lynchings in Prospect Park, it's all in my book. But what's not in my book is my own personal journey, and the only reason I'm able to discuss it with you right now is because I've gone through a shitload of therapy. I figured that Midtown was as good a place as any to get a good view of the action and stay out of danger. So I had the cabbie drop me off at a hotel on the corner of 43rd and Park, and I settled myself into the lobby right by the picture window. The mob was moving methodically down the sidewalk, heading south, literally stomping over anybody that got in their way. Concert goers were grabbing non-concert goers and throwing them across the street, throwing them hard. These people were crashing into the sides of buildings at 30 miles per hour. Eventually, there were piles of shattered bodies and puddles of thick blood littering the Park Avenue sidewalks. Once the mob was gone, I ran west over to 8th Avenue, figuring I could flag a cab and beat the crowd down to Greenwich Village. No way. By then, word had gotten around about the thousands of spaced-out freaks marching through the city, mindlessly attacking strangers, and the hacks weren't stopping to pick up anybody. So I fished out my wallet and notepad and pen, got on my high horse, and ran downtown. I made the 2 miles in just over 14 minutes. The mob was dispersed throughout the downtown area, but they seemed to be congregating in the West Village. I made my way over to this tiny park by 6th Avenue in Bleecker and climbed up into a small tree. It was the perfect place to be. I had a clear view of the action, and I rightly guessed that the maniacs wouldn't be looking in trees for people to attack. There were plenty of people on the streets to join them. The press referred to what I witnessed as the Greenwich Village massacre, but to me, massacre implies it was a single act that happened quickly, which wasn't at all the case. The downtown killings were random, yet meticulous. I saw more people thrown into buildings. I saw a woman pluck off another woman's limbs, run right after the other. I saw a person of indeterminate gender rip a young man's heart from his chest. I saw 2 teenage girls pick up a Ford Galaxy and throw the fucking thing towards Houston Street. When the car landed, it exploded and started a fire that burned for almost 48 hours. I don't know if their bloodlust was sated or if the spell wore off or what, but after midnight, the mob dispersed, and save for the injured, the dying, and the dead, the streets were empty. As the ambulances rolled to the scene, I found a payphone and made a collect call to the Times office. I feel sorry for whoever answered my call because after I identified myself, I screamed nonsense for a good minute or two before I could even get a proper sentence out. Once I found my voice, I asked him if he could find out where the Beatles were staying. No, I didn't ask him, I told him. He put me on hold, and 5 minutes later he said 2 words, Plaza Hotel. The Beatles weren't in the penthouse or even particularly high up. Their rooms were on the 6th floor as if they were any other guest. Lennon was in 606. I knocked on the door and right away he called out, "Who's there?" He sounded practically giddy. I said, "I'm a reporter from the New York Times. Put my ID card up by the people if you'd like." After he confirmed that I was who I said I was, he asked me, "Why should I let you in?" I said, "I want to ask you some questions and I'll make it worth your while." He laughed and said, "You can't offer me anything I don't already have." Then he opened the door and said, "I'll answer 2 questions. How's that sound?" I said, "Okay, why? Why did you do it?" He said, "Couldn't help it. Zombie nature. Next question?" I said, "What exactly is zombie nature?" He said, "You want to know about zombie nature?" He walked toward me, and the next thing I remember, I was at home, on my bed, showered, wearing my favorite PJs, undead as a doornail. The final Shea Stadium concert total, 1,051 dead, 3,198 injured, approximately $2 million in property damage, and 1 New York Times reporter turned into a zombie.